Good morning, Chair Postman, Member Garrett, staff and guests. The lobbies are open and the recording has begun.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Good morning, everybody. We'll convene the board caucus meeting for Tuesday, January 9th, 2024. Our first item up today is our first legislative update of 2024 on day 2 of the session. And Mark Webster, our Ledge Director, is here. Morning, Mark.
Good morning, Chair Postman and Member Garrett. As you mentioned, it is the second day of session, and I'll be running over to the Senate Labor and Commerce Committee as soon as I'm done here. It's an abbreviated meeting with the State of the State address coming today. We've only had one committee meeting thus far over in the House, and so there's not a whole lot to share, but I do want to update you on our bill and some of the big issues that we might see this year. Our agency request bill was finally approved by the governor's office, and we've been looking for sponsors. We have prime sponsors. It should be introduced very soon. I just want to wait till it's actually officially introduced because in part we're still looking for additional sponsors, co-sponsors. So I think I'll have more to say on that one next week. We are seeing a few new bills this year. We had a hearing on a change to the theater license yesterday. There's a bill for private clubs today, or more like private rooms. But we're also seeing many of the bills that we discussed last year. Those include a bill on low THC beverages and a bill requiring a vote of the people for local government bans on cannabis retail. Of particular interest, and I think we've had some discussion on this, is a very new approach to the adult entertainment bill that we discussed extensively last year. That's House Bill 2036, and it's being heard on Friday in the Labor and Workplace Standards Committee. That makes some sense because the bill is really focused almost exclusively on like the worker protection components of the bill that we saw last year. Many of those being the recommendations of the task force, but it's pretty silent on allowing liquor sales. So we're going to be following that one very, very closely and discussing it with stakeholders. I think we have a meeting coming up on that later this week. We've also seen a very new approach to psilocybin as well. That's Senate Bill 5977, and it too is headed for a different committee, in this case, Health and Long-Term Care. So we're going to have to keep an eye on these bills that are kind of going outside of our traditional policy committees. The other one to mention here is the Department of Agriculture's agency request bill to take over accreditation of cannabis labs from the Department of Ecology. That's House Bill 2151. I haven't seen a hearing scheduled as of yet, but I'll let you know when it does get scheduled. I think in principle, nothing would change about our work. The work that RJ Lee currently does would move to agriculture as opposed to ecology. We would still need to enforce that, and we would. But we need to make sure that nothing about our role or ancillary but important topics like proficiency testing changes as a result. And I think we're all kind of pulling in the same direction, and I think we can figure that one out. But we need that, and we need the private labs to have some stability and some certainty as well, so they can keep doing that important role. With that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions, or are there any issues that you want to make sure that we're tracking?
The only other thing I'd add to the list or ask you about is hemp related.
Yes.
You know, we've talked a little bit. We saw one draft. What's your best sense of what to expect?
We just saw that one. The hemp and food pilot program just dropped this morning. Okay. I think that's 6077, but we're going to be looking at that since it just dropped. I think I just skimmed it before this meeting, but I think that's definitely something we're going to need to come back to next week and going forward. We'll have policy look at that as well.
And get some feedback to the other one too that we saw last week, the hemp bill. I sent you a single page that we saw draft that one. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We'll look at those together and get some feedback out.
Yeah. Yeah. Because just going to be, we're still in the middle of rulemaking from last year's.
Exactly.
It seems, complicated at least. But I think it's possible there's something that would help us all. But some, I think, approaches might make our rulemaking even more difficult.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. Yep. That's all I had. Any questions this morning? Right now? Okay. Great. Thanks. Well, good luck session. Okay, that's it. We will move on to our next item, which is policy and rules team updates and board meeting prep. And there's Cassidy West already. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Postman and Board Member Garrett. So I'm going to provide the updates a little bit in chronological order this time. So coming up next week, or actually coming up this week, stakeholders can expect a THC bill survey to go out. And that's a follow-up survey to the stakeholder engagement that was held in December. And so we're looking to have another round of stakeholder engagement on the conceptual draft rule language in February. So then moving to the January 17th board meeting, Denise will be presenting the CR 105 for initiating expedited rulemaking to implement some provisions from last year's legislation, ESSB 5363, regarding penalties for tobacco for given to people 21 years or younger. 21 years, yeah. Maybe I mean 18 years. I'll
No, it's 21
check
now.
it.
Yeah.
21? Oh, okay. New to Washington. Okay, so we don't need stakeholder engagement on that because it is an expedited rulemaking. Later in the process, people can have a opportunity to object, though. And then next week, also, Daniel will be presenting, he won't be presenting, the public hearing for the alcohol delivery and Mass 13 rule project will be held at the regularly scheduled board meeting. Any questions about next week or the survey?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, and then at the January 31st board meeting, the heavy metals petition will be presented by Denise. We've received one comment so far, and as a reminder, the comment deadline is January 21st. Daniel and or Jeff will be presenting a petition on the 31st to amend the rules to allow streamlined use of shared equipment and spaces. These are both cannabis related petitions. We have not received any comments on that petition, and the comment deadline is also the 21st of January. And then any questions about that?
No.
All right. Great. And then in February, last bit, stakeholder engagement will be held for the social equity rulemaking. I mentioned last week that we've extended the informal public comment period to February 28th. So that just pushes the timeline back a little bit, a couple weeks, a month, depending on the filing schedule. And then we also have in February, most likely, stakeholder feedback on the draft proposed rule language. We've resumed that project and meeting as a project team later in the month to hopefully finalize draft proposed rule language and then wrap that project up. And then the last announcement I have is just requesting comment on a petition we received in 2022 about extending COVID privileges to allow minors on the premises of non-retail premises under certain circumstances. All of this is posted on our Laws and Rules website, and you can also submit comments through the portal as well. And that's all I have.
Great. Okay. Once we accept a petition, there's no clock that gets set for that. Okay. We have a deadline for having to act, whether to accept or deny. But then if we accept it, just puts it on. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yep. All right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week. And that's it. That's our agenda today. I'll just mention real quick that we have a new research manager, Sarah Oki, who was our researcher, is the new manager. Dr. Oki was one of the first 3 people in that brand new unit. We're really excited about her move into that position and look forward to more great work coming out of it. They're already doing some really interesting stuff, and it's nice to have them. With that, anything else to report, Dustin?
Not for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, then we will adjourn, and we have an executive management team meeting Wednesday afternoon. And so we'll be back for that. We are adjourned.